Hello, Miami. Welcome, Jack. We have 12,000 Bitcoiners here.
You're incredible.
And I think there's 20,000 out there listening. So we're happy to see this phenomenon grow. I wanted to start with, I think, the big question that probably most people are asking. Why are you on stage with a human rights activist? What does Bitcoin have anything to do with human rights? Isn't it just about investment?
Not for me. I mean, for me, that like Bitcoin changes absolutely everything. And what I'm drawn to the most about it is the ethos, is what it represents, is how the conditions that created it are so rare and so special and so precious, and I don't think there's anything more important in my lifetime to work on, and I don't think there's anything more enabling for people around the world.
We often hear in our community that, yes, I agree. We often hear in our community this kind of mantra that like Bitcoin is for everybody, that it's like non-discriminatory, that it's really kind of opening for many people around the world who are walled off from whether it's transactions, saving, connecting with the world. What is your perspective on this idea that like Bitcoin is for everybody?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm focused on, making sure that I help with. Like whatever I can do, whatever my companies can do to make it accessible to everyone is how I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Like if I were not at Square or Twitter, I'd be working on Bitcoin. If it needed more help than Square and Twitter, I would leave them for Bitcoin. But I think I believe both companies have a role to play, and I think anything that we can do as companies to help also find the right intersection between a corporate narrative and a community open narrative is for the best.
The theme for today is banking the unbanked. As you all know, probably there's billions of people around the world who are either completely unbanked or they're underbanked. Yet, the mobile phone is growing at a remarkable pace. So even in countries like Ethiopia and Sudan, you now have 20-25% of the population with a mobile phone. And in the next 5 years, that's going to pass 50%. So we're now in a position where the increase of technology is going to allow more people to come online. And with Bitcoin, it doesn't matter what passport you have or what nationality you are, what ethnicity you are, what you believe in, you can connect to this network. So when we think about banking the unbanked, what's your vision for like what is most important for helping onboard people into this new system?
Well, we don't need the banks anymore. And I mean, there's so much work to do around accessibility. There's so much work to do around education, so that people can own the idea themselves. And I want to thank you, by the way. I appreciate you so much for all the work you do to like take away a bunch of the myths that people have in their head and give a strong case for why Bitcoin can be used by everyone. But you know, it just like we don't need the financial institutions that we have today. Mm-hmm. We have one that is thriving, that is sound, that is owned by the community, that is driven by the community, that has this incredible and amazing consensus that always manages to do the right thing over time. It's noble, and it's so rare and so unique. So anything that we can do to build it and to protect it, we're down to do.
You recently personally launched a new fund with Jay-Z, where you guys dedicated 500 Bitcoin to help the Bitcoin ecosystem in Africa and India. Can you talk a little bit more about the vision for that fund and what you all hope to do over the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, I spent November of 2019 roaming around the continent of Africa. I went to Nigeria, I went to Ethiopia, Ghana, and I saw that the #1 problem that entrepreneurs were working on there, and I only met the entrepreneurs, I didn't meet anyone in the government or the media. They're all working on payments, and the most interesting of them were working on Bitcoin. And when I saw the reports of Nigeria considering banning Bitcoin, when I saw the reports of India considering banning Bitcoin, is a reminder that we could use a lot more help developing around the world, finding developers on the continent of Africa, enabling them to do their work without having to think about taking another job is important. So talking to Jay about it, Jay loves Bitcoin. He goes very deep on what he loves. He believes in it. And he also believes in this idea of making sure that if we're going to create a money for the world, it has to be developed around the world. And anywhere there are gaps, we should try to fill. So right now, we're trying to find the right board for it. It's going to be a completely separate entity. I have no control or say or direction over it. Once we find that board, they'll hire a lead, and they'll start making grants denominated in Bitcoin.
So Jay might have 99 problems, but being his own bank won't be one, huh?
He's more than a bank.
Let's speak a little more about that. Nigeria is a country of more than 200 million people. They have a 15% inflation rate. They are, in many ways, closed off from the outside world in terms of fintech payments. How has traveling the world and going to different countries kind of opened your eyes to the global impact of Bitcoin, where maybe people in like Wall Street, Silicon Valley, in London, may not be seeing? Like, what are they missing when they say there's no social value to Bitcoin? Like, what do you think they're missing?
I mean, they're missing everything. They're not getting out of New York. They're not getting out of the country. They're not talking to people. Go to Nigeria for one day and see the struggle that people have to put up with their government and with their money. And go to Ghana, that has a bunch of transplants from all over the continent, and you witness the same thing every single day. Go to India, and you see the same.
Yeah, my advice is they should try living on like the Sudanese pound for like 6 months, and then come back and tell us that Bitcoin's not useful. And I think they'll get a little reality check there. So today we've got, maybe estimates vary, but anywhere from like 150 to 200 million people have used Bitcoin in some way, right? So we're at like maybe 2%, 2.5% of the world population. I believe we're going to 1 billion people by 2025, certainly by the end of the decade. And when you have so many more people on-ramping into the system, we're probably going to have a situation where the fees on the main chain of Bitcoin are going to get pretty high in fiat terms. So can you talk about, for people who, like in Nigeria and Sudan and other places, who are going to need micropayments, who are going to want to send $5, $10, can you talk a little bit about your commitment at Square to Lightning, how you kind of understood that Bitcoin will scale in layers, perhaps, instead of like just kind of on the main chain, and why you're so committed to Lightning in a time where we're going to get a lot more users?
Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, that's why I'm committed to Lightning, is because this is going to be used by more and more people. And, my belief in Bitcoin, it's an amazing asset. But my belief is the internet needs a native currency. We need to be able to transact with this every single day. And everyone around the world needs to transact with it every day. So the only reason Square got into Bitcoin is to that end. It's not just to be an exchange. And that's why we don't deal with any other currencies or coins, because we're so focused on making Bitcoin the native currency for the internet. So it's meeting Elizabeth and team.
How can you say that this is a currency for everyone in the world when you are the king of censorship? Bitcoin is about decentralization, and you have no right to be here today speaking about this.
We're working on that too. We're working on that too.
We'll get to that. I get it. We get to that. Can you please? We'll get to that. I promise. Thank you.
We can talk about it. We can talk about it. We can talk about it.
Well, why don't we just go right to that? I was going to talk about it later. We hear a lot about censorship, right? maybe we'll let this settle down for a second. All right. No, we'll hit on that briefly. It's obviously very important.
We'll talk about it.
Can social media be more like Bitcoin? Bitcoin is censorship resistant. Nobody controls it. What is your thought on that? What is your thought on this? It's a thorny problem.
Yes, I do believe it can. I know there's a number of you out there who disagree with a lot of actions that Twitter has taken. I know there's a lot of, I know there's a lot of you out there who disagree with our policies and the way we've evolved them. I appreciate that. I recognize it. I also recognize the fact that there is an incentive and a corporate incentive and a business incentive that is different than what might be needed for global communication, for public conversation. And my goal in my life in this moment is to remove as much as I can the corporateness of our companies and find better intersections with the open source community. Certainly, Bitcoin has taught me that with Square, and we're doing everything in our power. We're doing everything in our power to do that. And we're trying to do the same thing with Twitter by creating a new platform, a new open source standard called Blue Sky. We're just starting it. And it will have none of the restrictions that you see on Twitter. So inspired entirely by Bitcoin, we want to do the same thing for social media. And again, I know you're not going to believe me. I know you're saying liar. I'm going to prove it to you. And then we can have another conversation later.
Yeah, well, look, when we look at something like Lightning, it's not just a payments network. It can also be like a censorship-resistant social media platform. There's folks out there building stuff like Sphinx, which I highly recommend you pursue.
Sphinx is amazing.
Sphinx is really cool. Basically, what you can do is you can follow your favorite creators, maybe like your favorite podcast, maybe you're following what Marty and Matt are doing, or something like that. And you can go into a tribe on Sphinx, and you can just stream them censorship-resistant private money on Lightning, and nobody can stop you. And that's happening. That's inevitable. It's coming. So this vision of like, streaming money to the people that you care about in a way that the government cannot stop, I know that that's what Laura wants. And that's what you all want, where you're upset with Twitter. Well, guess what? It's coming, and nobody can stop it. So I think that that's a pretty interesting segue into, maybe getting back to the idea of Lightning, what it is, and why you at Square, and especially Square Crypto, have focused so heavily on it, as opposed to, like, you could have done a lot of other things, right? Like, why the focus on Lightning?
Again, it goes back to the currency. Like, Square Crypto and Steve and team and Matt have been focused on making sure that any wallet can easily turn on Lightning and make it accessible to everyone. So the more people we have considering using Bitcoin for payments, for tips, for streaming money,
Yeah.
the stronger this ecosystem is, and the more we achieve our goal.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're really building out like a parallel economy here that, again, is not controlled by governments or corporations. And I just wanted to show you like how this works, and then maybe Jack and I can reflect on this a little bit. Our friend Jack Mallers has created a company called Strike with a lot of help from a lot of other people. Amazing Bitcoin company. And he started a campaign recently to help Bitcoin development. So I'm on the Strike page right here, all right? And I'm going to go ahead and donate, $2 worth of Bitcoin to Strike, okay? So I'm going to copy that Lightning invoice. I'm going to go to my Moon wallet created by an awesome team in Argentina, and I'm going to send that Bitcoin right now, and it is going to go, and it's gone. That's a bearer asset that has just moved instantly around the world. And I didn't ask permission from anybody. So again, when we get back to this like conflict about how are we going to build a social media, how are we going to communicate with each other without censorship and surveillance, it's through Bitcoin. So, I mean, I just want to underline, that's why I think Jack is kind of so persistent in this, because it must be such a freaking struggle to watch the entire world criticize everything you do, and I think that's fair. We should do that and hold you to a high standard.
Definitely do it. We should definitely do it, and I appreciate it.
But it's not like some magic fairy dust. This is real. Like, lightning is real, and I just sent a bearer asset around the world, and nobody could stop me. I didn't have to ask any permission. I didn't have to prove my identification. This is an actual revolution. This is the revolution. So when we talk about Bitcoin and Lightning, if we're going to build it the right way, it's got to be non-custodial. Now, minutes before you walked on stage, you announced something pretty big that you guys are going to do at Square. Do you want to talk about your vision for like non-custodial Bitcoin use?
Yeah, I mean, we're considering building a non-custodial hardware wallet, and the thing we want to do is make it completely in the open. So from all of our software to all of our hardware design, will be open source. It'll be on GitHub. We want to build it in collaboration with the community. So we started a thread today just asking some questions about our design principles. We don't want to compete with the hardware wallets out there. We just want to take it to the next level and get to 100 more million people who have non-custodial solutions. And we're likely to do it sometime very soon. But we wanted to make sure that we're thinking about this in the correct way and we're reaching out to the right folks in the community to build it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that non-custodial use of Bitcoin is so important. And Satoshi, the creator of Bitcoin, knew this. Just a little tidbit for the audience here. Satoshi chose his or her birthday as April 5th, okay? April 5th was the day that the United States government basically, banned private ownership of gold in 1933. So when Satoshi was designing Bitcoin, he or she was thinking about how the US government centralized and confiscated gold away from the people and how they could make a system that could prevent that. They chose the year of their birthday as 1973, which was when gold was made available for the American people again. So I think we need to think about this very carefully. Non-custodial use of Bitcoin is built into Satoshi's vision for the project. So it's really exciting to see Square support this. I think a lot of the custodians in the space won't be very happy, but as you said today in your thread, as inspired by Isaiah, not your keys, not your cheese.
Yep. Yep. No, and as a custodial exchange, we need to push more companies like us to make sure that people have non-custodial solutions, and we're gonna show up.
Earlier, you brought up, this is very important. You brought up a point where y'all are Bitcoin only, right? Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? I mean, there's a lot of talk about proof of stake and other coins. Like, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin and its proof of work and full nodes model versus maybe other models?
I mean, again, like the conditions that created Bitcoin, everything that went into it, from the proof of work model to the development model, no single points of failure, everything about it is why we're into it. There's nothing else that compares to it. And we have no interest other than making sure that we are building a native currency for the internet and helping in every way that we can. So all the other current coins, to me, don't factor in at all.
And yeah, I just wanted to underline this for the audience here. Like, Bitcoin is about user control. Like, the users control the monetary policy. Like, you control it, you control it, you control it, I control it. There's not a small group of people controlling the monetary policy. And that's really what we're here for. We're here to create an alternative to this system, the fiat system, where a small group of people can basically determine, what the rules are. I just was in a meeting yesterday with an amazing guy named Fode Diop from Senegal. He's telling me this story about how in the late 90s, he lives in a country that still uses the CFA. It's a French colonial currency, so the French from Paris control these people, and they make decisions on behalf of them. His father had saved up all this money for him to go to college, and the French just decided to devalue the currency overnight, and he could no longer pursue his dreams. That's why when he saw Bitcoin later, he was like so open to it and excited, and he said, this is my ticket out of here, right? So at the end of the day, you have to remember the difference between Bitcoin and all the other coins is that Bitcoin, we control the monetary policy. It's not going to change. And with every single other coin, it's up to some small group of people who are going to, at best, do their best. And then the track record for that globally is
until they don't.
Until they don't.
Until they get corrupted in some other way.
Yeah, I mean, there's always this temptation to print more to fix the problems, right? Well, you can't do that with Bitcoin. Now, when we talk about other digital currencies, there is a digital currency phenomenon that I did want to talk to you about, and that's central bank digital currencies. So it appears that around the world, there's this drive to move beyond paper cash and to bring us to a system where like citizens actually may have a liability of the central bank in their phone, as opposed to using paper money. And this obviously presents a lot of civil liberties concerns. Even Christine Lagarde has said that the digital euro won't really have full privacy. Obviously, the Chinese government is pursuing an aggressive CBDC. These things are likely to lead to like forced spending, negative interest rates, confiscation, blacklists. So this is all happening. There's like this war on cash. What are your thoughts on this idea of like, financial freedom and privacy in a world that's moving beyond paper money?
I mean, I think all of the things that you mentioned in terms of what central banks are trying to do are just, bumps in the road, and they're bullshit. We have a much better alternative in Bitcoin. We have designs for that, that sort of privacy and that freedom within it. And the more we can, especially our governments can realize that and get in the boat sooner, the better off we all are.
A lot of people say, Bitcoin's just for bad people. It's just for bad actors. What's your kind of response to that? Like, it's just for criminals? Like, same sort of stuff that they said in the early 90s about encryption, right? They were like, oh, it's going to be for bad people. We don't want Americans to have privacy. Well, thankfully, the cypherpunks, made it possible for us to have things like Signal. What is your response when you talk to regulators or government officials or people when they say, this is just too risky, it's going to hurt people?
It feels like it's a cover for something else going on. I don't actually hear that a lot from regulators.
Interesting.
Square was one of the first companies that was a public company that talked to the SEC about Bitcoin. That never came up. So it feels like there's probably something a little bit deeper when you're hearing any of these excuses, and it's just trying to understand what that really is. And I think it's really losing power effectively.
One of the interesting things about Bitcoin is the way that the incentives align. So recently there was a little bit of a controversy with some of the companies that are doing Bitcoin mining and a software upgrade that's going to bring new privacy to Bitcoin called Taproot, which is in the process of activating right now, which is very exciting. But one of these companies, they weren't signaling for Taproot, and then there was like this huge community backlash. And the company was actually forced to come out with a video message and say, sorry, we're definitely going to signal, they basically sort of bent the knee to the community. That's a unique phenomenon that awesome. A corporation would be virtue signaling for censorship, resistance, and privacy. What do you see when you look at stuff like that?
It was awesome. The community could change the path and change the mindset. I think that's incredible. And I don't know why it didn't happen sooner, but it's just another lesson for any company trying to get into this space and trying to support Bitcoin.
Well, there's a lot of people who say Wall Street's just going to control Bitcoin. They're just going to make it a tool for themselves. I mean, that's kind of a nice example of how that's probably not the case, right?
It can't, and it never will. It never will. And the more companies, small, big, that demonstrate that and try to offset, again, their corporateness by doing things that are more supportive of the community itself, such as creating a Square Crypto-like thing, such as creating a COPA-like thing to give up Bitcoin patents to protect the community. It becomes more and more resilient every single day.
I often think about how the world is so focused on the micro movements of the Bitcoin exchange rate versus the dollar. And meanwhile, this incredible foundational upgrade has just been essentially transformed into reality by the users, and nobody's paying attention to this. It's kind of interesting, right? It's almost like running interference for the real revolution, right?
It's working. It's incredible.
I wanted to hit another topic here. We hear a lot about Bitcoin's energy use, right? And you all at Square just put out a paper with ARC that described how actually, Bitcoin mining might incentivize the adoption of renewable energy. And it may actually basically help unlock renewable energy resources that are stranded or otherwise unused around the world. Can you talk to us a little bit about why you have this belief or philosophy that Bitcoin mining is actually like helpful for our species and our planet?
Yeah, I mean, just you just look at the economics of it, and ultimately miners have to make a profit, and getting cheap renewable energy maximizes their potential for profit. It's really that simple. And I thought I had some agreement with some notable figures out there, and then that seemed to change over a matter of a few weeks, and now it's in a weird kind of place. But I believe fully that Bitcoin over time and today does incentivize more renewable energy. And I think it does incentivize more awareness around how we're getting that power, and gives people more freedom to convert unused, wasted power into something that actually creates value for billions of people around the world.
Yeah, just a couple. I mean, I think it's a great message. Just a couple facts I'd throw out to the audience. The U.S. government this year is decommissioning, for political reasons, more nuclear power than is necessary to power essentially the entire Bitcoin network. So, we need to think carefully about energy and waste and the environment, but there's more than meets the eye here, and I would encourage all of you to sort of dig in and learn more about Bitcoin mining. I also wanted to share briefly this example of how it could actually benefit people in emerging markets. So a lot of philanthropists and outside investors have been trying to help Virunga National Park in the DRC, in the Congo. And they've been building some hydro facilities there. They have this mighty river and incredible natural resources. But the problem is that when they build the dam, it takes time to connect the transmission lines to the dam, so the project remains fairly inert for a while, and it's not like that exciting of a development project for that reason. But about a year and a half ago, the people who run the park, and this is an incredible park that supports 5 million people, it's the most amazing wildlife in the planet, they decided to start Bitcoin mining, and it gave them a source of revenue that can allow them to bootstrap the rest of their operations. And this is coming online across the country. And that's going to happen in so many countries that can start unlocking solar, wind, renewable, you name it. I mean, they're going to start realizing that this can help bootstrap them into some energy independence. So I think that's important for you all to consider when you're reading these headlines about how Bitcoin is boiling the oceans. You need to think deeper. That's what I think. 100%. I don't know. What do you think,
100%,
Jack?
100%. Well said. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to wrap up. I have one more thing to say. Today, 32 years ago today, these incredibly brave students in Tiananmen Square stood up for freedom. Chinese people are still fighting that fight today, especially the Uyghur people, especially the Tibetan people, especially people in Hong Kong. We often hear that Bitcoin is a threat to America and is a threat to our values. But is it really? Isn't Bitcoin's free speech and property rights and sovereignty, don't you think that vibes better with our society than maybe a closed communist police state? Don't you think that we're going to benefit a little more than maybe some other countries? Maybe could you even say Bitcoin is patriotic?
100%. But I think it benefits the entire world. I mean, that's what makes it incredible, is every single person in the world will benefit and get value from utilizing this. And the more accessible we make it, just that realization that we finally have a currency that can be traded to any single point on the planet is pretty incredible. And what that enables going forward is mind-blowing. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I mean, this concept that Bitcoin is for everyone is, I think, what I want you to go home with. Bitcoin is non-discriminatory. It cannot choose who uses it. And none of you can block our access or her access or his access. It is something that's open for all of us, and it's open source. And I, as a human rights activist, am grateful that companies like Square are supporting the open source side of Bitcoin, are supporting non-custodial use, are supporting Lightning. These are things that I don't think may have been possible before Bitcoin's incentive structure. So I really wanted to thank you, Jack, for coming out and sharing your thoughts. It's obviously a tricky political situation out there, but I think we agree that Bitcoin is the way forward here.
100%. It's the only way out.
Well, thank you all so much. I would thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll be back. My organization is back here in Miami in October for the Oslo Freedom Forum, so I'd encourage you to learn more, and have a great day.